Snow White 2025 will go down as one of the worst PR disasters in cinematic history.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. Weird.
But what if I told you there was another time Snow White found herself lost in the forest of bad press? It happened in 1989, and it involved the Academy Awards, Rob Lowe, and lots of dancing furniture. This is the grim story of how one infamous Oscars segment led to an industry uprising and destroyed the careers of those involved. What began as a fairy tale would end as a nightmare. Producer Allan Carr was recouping from hip surgery when he got tapped to produce the 1989 Oscars telecast. He's the famed impresario behind the movies Grease, Can't Stop the Music, and the Broadway smash La Cage aux Folles.
I am what I am.
Carr was a bombastic showman, legendary for staging lavish promotional events, and was even Olivia Newton-John's first manager. It had been his bright idea to cast her as Sandra Dee.
Sandy? Tell me about it, stud.
Behind the scenes, he hosted debaucherous parties from his in-home discotheque where he usually held court wearing his signature outfit, a colorful caftan and oversized glasses.
My business life and my social life is all mixed together.
His Hollywood parties are almost as famous as his movies.
And most people talk about nostalgia, about good old days. And I say to myself and to my friends, I mean, these are the good old days. The way they used to talk about Errol Flynn and Humphrey Bogart, we're doing it right now. This is really it. Roll it. I don't want to wake up and go, gee, I wish I had done that. And that's unfortunately what happens to a lot of people. They wait so long to have the moment. And I'm having all the moments right now.
By 1988, Carr had slowed down. It had been several years since his last big thing, so the offer to host the Oscars was music to his ears. Carr first met with Academy President Richard Kahn in his hospital recovery room and could hardly contain his excitement. Later on, he held a press conference at his Beverly Hills mansion. Behind him stood a 6-foot Oscar statue erected in the front yard. He said it had always been his dream to produce the show. Quote, "It's the highest honor you can get from the Academy, other than winning one." As a side note, Carr never did get nominated for an Oscar himself, but he did win multiple Razzies.
It's the musical extravaganza that launches the 80s. It's Alan Carr's Can't Stop the Music.
Oddly, producing the telecast was an unpaid gig at that time, so much like the Super Bowl halftime show, the exposure itself was considered enough reward. Carr promised reporters that the 61st Academy Awards was going to be a big spectacle, splashed with glitz and glamour and of course movie stars.
It's about gowns and hair and looking good. It should be dignified, but it should be entertaining and fun.
In a major departure from other award shows, he had the idea to scrap the host entirely. Quote, "I just want as many great people as we can possibly get. We're casting the presenters as if we were casting a movie." The hype machine went into full effect in the 4 months leading up to the event.
And this last Oscar show, there was more glamour on the jeans commercial than there was on the Oscars. With all due respect to everybody, I mean, we really need help out there. The Tonys are better than the Oscars.
Carr proclaimed the Shrine Auditorium was going to look like an Easter basket after flying in 6 million tulips from Holland. He held another press conference to show off one of the sets from the opening number, a flashy recreation of the Coconut Grove nightclub from the early days of Hollywood. Carr made a vow that it would be the most beautiful Academy Awards and the antithesis of tacky. Despite that claim, Los Angeles Magazine noted that some of the more conservative board members were nervous about what he was planning.
There was one word that people attached to Alan. It was the word flamboyant.
Your whole lifestyle is flamboyant.
Do you think this is flamboyant?
And of course, flamboyant at the time was often code for gay.
We're just gonna ignore this?
Alan, that's a fantastic outfit you're wearing tonight. What is that?
He was openly gay, but I don't think it was discussed at that point. Alan wanted to be Rock Hudson, and he wasn't.
Oh, baby, come on.
Allan Carr was inspired by a campy musical revue he had seen in San Francisco called Beach Blanket Babylon. He thought it was fabulous. The basic premise is Snow White's life after she leaves the Seven Dwarfs and then travels the world in search of Prince Charming.
Once upon a time, in 1974, a wild and wacky show called Beach Blanket Babylon opened in San Francisco. There was lots of dancing, lots of singing, and lots of crazy costumes, and it took the town by storm, playing year after year to sold-out houses.
Carr enlisted the show's creator, Steve Silver, to adapt it for the Oscars. The updated story became Snow White arriving in Hollywood with stars in her eyes. For the music and lyrics, they enlisted none other than Marvin Hamlish. He's the celebrated composer of The Sting, among many other movies.
For me, it's always been about the writing. The process of writing is the most glorious of everything. It beats winning an award. It beats almost anything you can think of. Just the actual writing. It's euphoric.
This would not be considered his finest hour.
I have so many wonderful, memories of my Hollywood.
A 22-year-old aspiring actress named Eileen Bowman won the role of Snow White after a series of auditions and costume fittings.
No one told me what I was auditioning for. And then I was whisked off to Alan Carr's house. We had pink water in his swimming pool, and there was about a 20-foot gold Oscar standing outside his front door. Then I was taken up to a room. There's a Snow White outfit on the bed. I thought, what in the world is going on?
She spoke about the whirlwind experience with The Hollywood Reporter in 2013. Quote, Steve Silver asked me, "How are you with famous people?" I thought, well, they're like anybody else. He said, "You got the job." I said, "Oh, great." He said, "Do you know what this is for?" I said, "Beach Blanket Babylon." And he said, "No, honey, this is for the Oscars." I rehearsed for a week and a half. It was my first AFTRA job, and I was paid scale, $350 a week. Our rehearsals were on the Fox lot, and they were closed. I mean, like Fort Knox. And the producers knew exactly what they had in me. I wasn't asking any questions. They came up to me daily and said, "You should be paying us for this." Meanwhile, Allan Carr continued to promote the show every chance he got.
Well, the opening number is... it could be the Titanic, as at this point, I don't know.
He made one final push on Good Day Live.
I'm wondering, Alan, why does anyone take on the enormous proportions of producing the Oscars? Is it an honor, or is it kind of an incumbent thing where it's incumbent upon you once in your career to take this on? Because it must be an enormous undertaking.
Well, first of all, it's not for the money, because we do this job for free.
Right.
And since I am a child of the movies, growing up in Chicago, and remember first hearing it on the radio and then watching it on television, it's something I always dreamt that I wanted to do, but I never thought they would ask me. I guess they thought I was too pushy or flashy or not establishment enough. But this year they came to me and said, "Would you do it?" And I was just thrilled. And the key to having a good show is starting early. I started in October. I think you're going to see one of the best Oscar shows ever. We have more stars, more genuine glamour, I think probably more humor, and it's probably, for one thing, it's the most beautiful Oscar show ever. We have 12 set changes that are all to do with staircases and draperies, and everyone has put their best foot forward.
Before signing off, he makes sure to tease the Snow White segment, and he makes a very prescient statement.
Tune in at the beginning, because you're going to see an opening number the likes of which may never happen again, or they may bring the curtain down.
It may never happen tomorrow night.
That's right. It's live, you know.
It is live.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Nice to
surprises.
see you. All right, Alan Carr and Michael Caine, thank you. We'll look forward to it. 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
The big night finally arrived on March 29th, 1989. 1 hour before showtime, Carr told reporters, quote, "If it goes as well as it did in dress rehearsal, I'll be in show business heaven." At 6 p.m. Pacific, the show began.
Tonight, live from the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, California, the motion picture capital of the world, it's the 61st Annual Academy Awards.
Variety columnist Army Archerd had been interviewing red carpet arrivals, but was now tasked with opening the show from the Shrine lobby.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's one of the great legends of Hollywood. She's back with us tonight, Miss Snow White. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Archer. It is so exciting to be here tonight.
Speaking in a distinctly screechy voice, she asks him how to find the theater, to which he replies, "Follow the Hollywood stars."
Follow the Hollywood stars? Oh, follow the Hollywood stars!
The bit combines two classic film icons, Disney's Snow White, of course, and MGM's The Wizard of Oz. The audience is already starting to get uneasy. They're thinking, who is this lady? And what's with all the dancing stars? So far, it's coming off like a cheap regional theater production. The sets will become more impressive later on. As Snow White finds her way into the auditorium, she greets Michael Douglas and Robin Williams, who Eileen Bowman had been warned to stay away from because of his unpredictability. Then she starts singing a version of I Only Have Eyes for You, swapping the word eyes with stars. Get it? Because there are a lot of stars there.
Yes, we only have stars for you.
Snow White continues to serenade the front row, forcing the famous actors to become reluctant participants in the bit as she gets up close and grabs their hands. The look of secondhand embarrassment on their faces is priceless. It's one thing for famous stars to do crowd work with another famous star, but Eileen Bowman was a complete unknown.
I'm petrified. I have to sing in these famous people's faces. They had looks of shock. All I remember is going up to each person and going, oh, that's Michelle Pfeiffer. Hello. I'm like right in her face going, it was crazy. And I was really proud of myself because I could have had a heart attack and died, but I didn't.
It's also important to keep in mind that most of these people are nominated for something, so they're nervous and uptight. One of the only stars to give her a warm reception was Martin Landau, who was up for supporting actor for Tucker, the Man in His Dream. Many years later, Landau recalled that moment. Quote, "It wasn't her fault. I empathized with her. Poor Snow White. She didn't have the dwarves to support her." Alan Carr had originally wanted someone with a name to play the role, like Judy Garland's daughter Lorna Luft, but she declined, saying, "That's great for an unknown, but I've worked too hard to be somebody."
Questions? What does time mean? Time means when you're not bored. The thing is, there is no time limit. As I said, it's shorter than Lawrence of Arabia. That's all I can tell you.
After what felt like an eternity, but was only actually 90 seconds, Snow White finally takes center stage and reminisces about the good old days in Tinseltown.
I remember the movie premieres at Grauman's Chinese Theater and the wonderful star-studded parties at the Coconut Grove.
And with that, we're transported to the Coconut Grove circa 1937, where MC Merv Griffin belts out his signature novelty song.
I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts.
He then proceeds to introduce a string of Golden Age movie stars. Allan Carr considered this portion of the number to be his biggest coup, as he was able to surprise the audience with some very big names.
Meet the stars, Mr. Buddy Rogers, Miss Alice Faye, Mr. Tony Martin.
Two stars who weren't there and had turned down his invitation were Lana Turner and Ava Gardner. Their reasoning? They wanted people to remember them in their prime, as they appeared in the movies. Perhaps they had the right idea. This was the first of many Oscar ceremonies to feature the work of comedy writer Bruce Vilanch. In an interview with the Archive of American Television, he explains why the segment fell flat.
The Golden Age stars were not as you remember them. They were all older, and they kind of were brought in from Palm Springs, and it wasn't very glamorous to see Dorothy Lamour being carried across the stage under the armpits by two guys. And Alice Faye and Tony Martin were older, and Roy Rogers and Dale Evans really didn't leave the table. And all of these people who had been legends in their times were not as you remember them. So instead of the audience going, "Oh my God, oh my God," they were going, "Oh my God." And it was a series of those things.
After the last of the Golden Age movie stars are unceremoniously whisked away, Merv Griffin introduces Snow White to a modern-day movie star.
Isn't it exciting, Snow? Isn't it thrilling? It gets better. Meet your blind date, Rob Lowe.
Oh, Mr. Lowe, I'm such a fan.
Really? Wow. I'm a big fan of yours, Snow, but you know, there's so much I'd like to know about you.
Alan Carr had booked the Brat Pack heartthrob to appeal to younger audiences. Rob Lowe told the New York Daily News, quote, "Being asked to perform at the Academy Awards is like being asked to the White House. You don't ask questions." Eileen Bowman says he was really wonderful to work with and that they bonded over their shared nerves of performing in front of 1 billion people. On stage, the two would-be lovebirds engage in some awkward repartee. Then they perform a duet of CCR's Proud Mary with brand new lyrics.
Used to work a lot for Walt Disney, starring in cartoons every night and day.
But you said goodbye to Grumpy and Sleepy, left the dwarves behind, came to town to stay.
Lights keep on burning, cameras keep on turning.
Incidentally, if their union had been made official that night, her married name would be Snow Lowe. Okay, let's continue.
Rolling, rolling, keep the cameras rolling. Rolling, rolling, keep the cameras rolling.
The rollicking number goes on and on. At one point, a waitress wearing a Carmen Miranda hat comes out and a bunch of tables and furniture start dancing.
It looked like a drug trip. But if you again, if anyone in that audience who saw Beach Blanket Babylon or was familiar with it would have gone, oh yeah, this is great. It was a real different flavor.
Rob Lowe talked about his experience on the Joe Rogan podcast.
I could tell just from the first bar that it was going to be bad. Yeah, when you were singing. Did you take singing lessons?
No, fuck. The whole thing. I look out in the middle of the audience and I see Barry Levinson. So he's at on this Oscars, he's about to win literally 11 Academy Awards. As an actor, there's no one you would want to impress more than Barry Levinson. It's the year of Rain Man. And I look out, Joe, in the middle of this, and I see his face. I'm not kidding. And this is what he literally was going. He went like this. What the fuck?
You see him actually make those.
I see him mouth the words, "What the fuck?" And so talk about bombing. And I'm like, but you know, we have to have our actors' denial. Like, we can't get through a career without a healthy dose of denial. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck Barry Levinson. What does he know anyway? Fuck that guy.
Towards the end of the opening number, the set changes to a replica of Grauman's Chinese Theater. Rob Lowe looks contemplative and somber, as if he's realizing the disaster he's now attached to. They both exit the stage as a chorus line of ushers make their entrance, singing and kicking like the Rockettes. Snow White makes one more dramatic appearance, looking like a final boss, complete with a cartoonishly large hat made to look like the Chinese Theater, and an enormous gold sparkling dress. These costumes were more details inspired by the original show, Beach Blanket Babylon, where they compensated for their lack of set design with huge outlandish hats.
Too much of it, darling, too much.
The opening segment finally ends with a rolling staircase. Lily Tomlin emerges from the entrance of the Chinese Theater, and as she makes her way down the steps, she loses a shoe a la Cinderella.
Well, I told them I'd be thrilled to do the Oscars if they could just come up with an entrance. And think of it, more than 1.5 billion people just watched that. Oh, God. Oh.
Tomlin seems as dazed and confused as the audience. Then the director of the telecast mercifully cuts to a commercial, finally putting an end to the opening extravaganza. Eileen Bowman remembers running into Glenn Close backstage, who greeted her with, "Well, hi, Snow White." She was then asked to stay in costume and attend the governor's ball with Rob Lowe. Quote, "That's where I put my foot down. I said, I'm not gonna be your little doll dressed as Snow White. I went to my dressing table and was taking my costume off, and there was Olivia Newton-John using my blush, which I still have. She was my idol, and she turned to me and said, 'How did you ever do that? How did you ever get out there in front of that many people and do that?'" There would be one more high-concept number later in the show called I Want to Be an Oscar Winner, featuring what were billed as today's brightest young stars.
Don't tell me about my speech. I'll know just what to say. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a who's who of late 1980s teen idols, including Patrick Dempsey, Blair Underwood, Ricky Lake, and yes, Corey Feldman. The audience may have been restless, but for Ricky Lake, performing on the Oscars stage was a dream come true.
I mean, I was so starstruck. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I got to sing, dance, tap dance, make out with Christian Slater, like all of it in one number.
Notably, the segment was introduced by Bob Hope and Lucille Ball in what would be her last public appearance before her death 1 month later.
You know, Bob, I've always felt that hidden within every great actor is a song and dance man.
Yeah, you're telling me. In another life, I was Shirley MacLaine.
Oh, no.
The 61st Academy Awards ultimately ran 3 hours and 15 minutes, with Cher closing out the night by announcing Rain Man as Best Picture.
We hope you had a good time. Good night, everybody. God bless you.
At first glance, Alan Carr thought the whole affair went swimmingly. The show was indeed filled with all the humor, glamour, and spectacle one would expect from Hollywood. Minus the opening, it was a fairly typical presentation.
What do you think the critics are going to say?
I think, well, I don't know, but the public loved it, and the people in the audience loved it, and I loved it, and the critics who read them. But thank you for being nice.
However, the mood would soon turn sour. According to the book Inside Oscar, Alan Carr was snippy to a reporter in the press room when asked why he chose Snow White. It was starting to sink in that his grandiose love letter to old Hollywood was being poorly received. Participants in the opening segment were left befuddled as well. Legendary actress and singer Alice Faye complained that she was a glorified background extra, relegated to 3 seconds of screen time.
Wednesday night's opening number at the Academy Awards was widely panned.
That musical number was embarrassing. It was dull, it was tacky, it didn't do justice to this wonderful industry.
Lucille Ball ran into a forlorn Rob Lowe backstage and said,
"Young man, I didn't know you were such a good singer. Come sit down." It was Lucille Ball.
Whoa.
And I went over and we sat down and she held my hand and we watched the Oscars together. And you know what? It made it all almost worthwhile.
Apparently, she was less charitable to Ricky Lake.
Wasn't she kind of
She wasn't very
salty
nice.
with you backstage?
Oh, salty is putting it mildly. She was not nice.
Why?
She was smoking a cigarette and you're in this like cardboard green room. I mean, I was
What did she say to you?
Did she call you a bitch? I just want to say, hey, bitch. No. She didn't do anything directly to me, but she was not happy to be there.
Right, yeah.
She died shortly after that.
I'm sure she hated your number, too.
Everyone hated her number.
Yes.
Everyone, but I loved it.
The next day, the reviews made it official. The New York Times echoed the rest of the media responses by saying the opening number deserved a permanent place in the annals of Oscar embarrassments. To add salt to the wound, Disney then filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement against the Academy over the unauthorized and unflattering use of the Snow White character.
I'm Snow White.
Snow White, the princess?
Yes.
Frank Wells, then president of the Walt Disney Corporation, stated that he would take no further legal action as long as the Academy issued an apology. The reason he was making such a stink is because Disney had recently teamed up with MGM Studios to build a theme park. They wanted to promote it during commercial airtime of the telecast, but the Academy turned them down because they thought that would imply an endorsement.
The Disney MGM Studios theme park at Walt Disney World in Florida.
To work around that, Disney made a deal with Chevrolet. They produced a minute-long ad that featured a Lumina sedan in front of the Chinese theater on the new MGM lot. Among the characters piling out onto the red carpet, the 7 Dwarfs. It was the first commercial of the night, which means it directly followed the Snow White segment. So naturally, viewers thought there was some kind of connection.
Chevy Lumina, official car of the Disney MGM Studios theme park in Florida. See you real soon.
In an effort to move on as quickly as possible, Academy President Richard Kahn publicly apologized for, quote, unintentionally creating the impression that Disney had participated in or sanctioned the opening production number. That apology effectively wiped away their legal troubles, but the Academy couldn't shake the disaster of that night entirely. In fact, the backlash continued to spread like poison inside an apple. Industry giant Gregory Peck initiated a letter to the Academy, signed by 16 of his equally distinguished peers, including Paul Newman, Billy Wilder, and Julie Andrews. She later claimed that she never saw nor signed such a letter. They blasted Alan Carr's presentation. Quote, "It is neither fitting nor acceptable that the best work in motion pictures be acknowledged in such a demeaning fashion."
Entertainment that, in the words of T.S. Eliot, enlarges the sympathies, that stimulates the mind and the spirit, that warms the heart, punctures the balloons of hypocrisy, greed, and sham.
One notable actor who was noticeably absent from the list was former President Ronald Reagan. Allan Carr said that he woke up the morning after the ceremony to a 6 a.m. phone call from Reagan, who told him it was the best television show he'd ever seen. That was little consolation, however. Carr knew that he had become persona non grata in Hollywood when he was shunned at Morton's Steakhouse following the big night.
Alan was having lunch right up at the front. You had to go by to pay your bill and get out of the restaurant. And I remember people climbing over chairs so they could get out of the restaurant without going by his table. They didn't know what to say to him. And they certainly didn't want to say, "Sorry about your show last night."
Also, a slew of upcoming projects were abruptly canceled. The phrase, "You'll never eat lunch in this town again," never rang so true. As a result of the scathing letter, the Academy set up an awards presentation review committee headed by Gil Cates, former president of the Directors Guild. Their first recommendation was to offer the producer of the show a salary. Seems obvious, but still a good change. Their next idea? Bring back the host and replace the opening number with a funny monologue. The very next year, Mr. Cates himself took over the producing duties, for which he was paid $150,000, and he hired comedian Billy Crystal to MC the show. Crystal entered the stage to enthusiastic applause and quipped,
"Is that for me, or are you just glad I'm not Snow White?"
Interestingly, the Snow White character would return to the Academy stage in 1993 to present Best Animation Short, but this time she was in familiar cartoon form and was approved by Disney.
When I got my big break 56 years ago, I never thought that someday I'd be standing here. But frankly, it's about time. I'm not getting any younger, you know.
In the aftermath of the Oscars debacle, Rob Lowe's career could have recovered sooner if not for a pesky sex tape that surfaced 2 months later.
More details are coming to light in the Rob Lowe sex tape saga as the investigation continues in Georgia. Garrett Glazer has that story in Atlanta.
Both the sex tape being reviewed by the district attorney and the civil suit against Rob Lowe concern his sexual encounter last summer in Atlanta with at least 2 women, one of them allegedly a 16-year-old minor.
He remained tabloid fodder until reviving his career with Wayne's World and The West Wing. He says the disastrous chain of events in 1989 changed his life.
Like people talk about, I go, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Honestly, I do, because got me sober got me married, been married 29 years, and I have 2 great sons. I don't think any of that happens without going through that scandal.
So what happened to his blind date? Eileen Bowman fled home to San Diego after the Oscars telecast. The next morning she woke up to a lawyer knocking at her door. He had a folder full of papers for her to sign, including a 13-year gag order. Quote, I remember sitting in my condo after being served the papers, watching the news, and the Snow White number was all that was on the news. I had no idea. My phone never stopped ringing. It was awful. All I can say is what Rob Lowe said, never trust a man in a caftan. Bowman would go on to become an accomplished stage actress, and to this day remains a staple of the San Diego theater scene. She and Rob Lowe would reunite in 2018 at the Balboa Theater in her hometown on the occasion of his one-man show. They now look back on that infamous night with a sense of humor.
That night of filming, as Rob Lowe said to me, there's blood in the water and the sharks are circling. You should probably not be here. I thought, well, I don't need to be hit over the head with my 80-pound Bob Mackie dress. I'm out of here. I do a lot of things differently. I would go on all the talk shows that asked me to go on. They told me I couldn't do any of that. And I said, okay, I'm scared. I'm scared. That's what you want to do these things for. I mean, now if I did it, I'd have my own Netflix show the day after. And I do believe, I know everything happens for a reason. This is a cautionary tale. I mean, it really is. But that's life.
As for Alan Carr, his career never fully recovered. He was devastated by the Oscars backlash, and especially the betrayal by his former friends in the business, who publicly chastised him.
You have all this success, and then the next minute they turn on you. I have to stop. I can't understand what's happening.
The experience left him drained. The once vivacious producer became a recluse and turned to food, alcohol, and drugs to numb his pain. In 1998, Carr emerged from seclusion for a triumphant swan song when Grease was re-released worldwide to celebrate the film's 20th anniversary. He was beaming on the red carpet. It was the happiest he'd been since the Academy ruined his life.
Everybody is here from Sandra Dee to Steven Spielberg, so we've covered the town. This is everything I hoped for. It's the miracle of my life. And it's all come true again. I'm just over the moon, as they say.
Sadly, the exuberance would not last. In June 1999, after years of declining health, Allan Carr died of liver cancer at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 62.
It's about movies, not having a lot of chorus guys and girls and feathers and running up and down stairs. I mean, this is about movie entertainment.
Reflecting on the show now, the intense uproar over it in 1989 seems ridiculous. The reaction was as over the top as the segment itself. I think the Academy took itself way too seriously. There has since been a plethora of embarrassing moments, cheesy gags, and shocking incidents.
Uh-oh, Richard!
Oh, wow! Wow!
The slap alone threatened to tarnish Oscar's good name more than a silly dance number ever could have. And one of Alan Carr's changes to the awards presentation has stuck to this day. It was his idea to get rid of the phrase, "and the winner is," in favor of, "and the Oscar goes to."
Any of those people who are nominated in any of those categories are a winner because the achievement is really stunning.
And the Oscar goes to?
We've changed that, and hopefully it'll stay that way forever.
And the Oscar goes to? Are they playing us off?
No.
In the end, the Snow White opening segment is merely an epic, offbeat song and dance number exploding with camp. It's sometimes bizarre, sometimes cringy, and yet entertaining the whole way through. Eileen Bowman calls it a gay bar mitzvah. The world wasn't ready for it then, and now it stands as one of the most memorable Oscar moments of all time. Okay, that about wraps things up. What do you think of the opening number? Was it overblown or did it deserve all the backlash? Let us know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and we'll see ya on the next one.